Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back to MOOC series ENV521 Wastewater Management. Today you are with me. I am Muhammad Izwan Masmud from Fakulti of Health Sciences, UiTM Puncak Alam. And today we would like to basically talk about the legal requirement on the Environmental Quality Act 1974. As we all know, Environmental Quality Act 1974 is the main act for the management of environment in Malaysia. And under this act, we have another one known as Industrial Effluent Regulation 2009, which is pertaining specifically talks about the management of effluent, especially from the industry. Okay, so we would like to take a glimpse on the Environmental Quality Act, Industrial Effluent Regulation 2009, and its requirement regarding on the wastewater management. Stay with me. Right, as I mentioned before, the existence of Industrial Effluent Regulation 2009 was basically part of the Malaysian Environmental Quality Act, and the intention of this regulation was to make sure or to ensure that our industry do not pollute into our river system. Well, basically, any wastewater from the industry process need to meet certain standards before it can be discharged into the environment. And this is very important to ensure that our public health is protected and also our aquatic life can be protected from the harmful pollution. The Environmental Quality Industrial Effluent Regulation 2009 will basically be enforced by the Department of Environment. This means that any industry that wants to discharge their wastewater into our water territory must get written approval and a license. The regulation provides the legal framework for the monitoring, compliance, and the enforcement. And also, it will tell us about the standard that has to be met and who will be the responsible party for ensuring the compliance. All right, just before we move into the deeper topics on this regulation, there are some key terms to understand. The first one would be the industrial effluent, which is basically the wastewater from the industrial process. The second one would be the industry premise, which refer back to the factory or facilities that generating the wastewater. The third one will be the treatment system, means any equipment or process that treats the wastewater. The next one will be the discharge limit, which is the maximum level of pollutant allowed in treated wastewater. And the last one will be the sensitive receiving water, example, rivers or area that need extra protection, like water intakes for drinking water. And then everything else will be considered as a non-sensitive. Okay, now we move on into the scope of regulation. Basically, this regulation cover many types of industry, including manufacturing, food processing, textile, pulp and paper, distilleries, and more. If a factory produces wastewater from its process, it will always fall under this regulation. It also applies to all types of industry wastewater, such as processed water, cleaning of the water, and also cooling water. However, not all industry need a full treatment plant, but some do. Industry must ensure that they must install the industrial effluent treatment system if the first one, the daily biological oxygen demand load is 6 kilogram or more, and then the daily suspended solid load is also 6 kilogram or more. The next one would be the wastewater contains heavy metals such as lead, chromium, cadmium, mercury, zinc, or copper. The wastewater that has toxic organic like phenols or cyanides, or if the process is listed in the first schedules of the regulation. Well, basically, if your wastewater could seriously pollute the environment, you have to consider that the installation of IETS is a must. Okay, this regulation basically defines two standards for the discharged water. The first one will be standard A and standard B. Standard A is much more stricter and always applies to sensitive area, such as rivers that use for drinking water. And standard B applies to the non-sensitive areas. Okay, these will be the some of the example of the limit. The first one will be BOD, biological oxygen demand, 20 milligram per liter for standard A and 50 milligram per liter for standard B. The next one will be the suspended solid, 50 milligram per liter for standard A and 100 milligram per liter for standard B. As for pH, between 6 to 9 for standard A and 5.5 to 9 for standard B. For ammonia nitrogen, 10 milligram per liter for standard A and 20 milligram per liter for standard B. And oil and grease, 10 milligram per liter for standard A and 20 milligram per liter for standard B. And the last one, heavy metal like lead, mercury, and zinc also have a strict limit. This could be checked in the schedule as mentioned in the F1 standard. Okay, on the other hand, for the COD, chemical oxygen demand, which measure the organic pollutant, has different limits depending on the type of industry. For an example, for the pulp mills, the standard A will be 80 milligram per liter and standard B will be 350 milligram per liter. As for recycled paper mill, the standard A will be 80 milligram per liter, while standard B for 250 milligram per liter. The textile industry for standard A will be 80 milligram per liter and standard B will be 250 milligram per liter. As for distillery industry, the A standard will be 400 milligram per liter while standard B 400 milligram per liter. For all other industry types, the standard A was set at 80 milligram per liter while standard B 200 milligram per liter. Even though chemical oxygen demand is not used to determine the IETS installation, but it was considered as part of the final F1 standard. Another concern would be on industry regarding on the industrial F1 treatment system. If an industry has the IETS, it must operate it properly. You cannot bypass the system of the untreated wastewater and channel down your wastewater into the river system. You must ensure that your wastewater always flow into the system before you discharge the wastewater into the river system. And the system should be managed by a trained personnel and should be regularly maintained. Regular check must make sure that the wastewater meet the requirement standard before it is released to the environment, especially to the river system. One of the responsibility of the industry is basically they must monitor their own wastewater, often daily or weekly, depending on the license. The test must be done in accredited laboratories. Then the Department of Environment will always check or conduct inspection and verification sampling. The non-compliance can lead to fine, notice, or even prosecution. So it is very important for the industry to follow all the instruction and rules. Uh, for the fine, a person or company can be fined up to 100,000 ringgit, or in a serious cases, the imprisonment up to 5 years may be imposed by the agency. To sum up, the industry must manage their wastewater carefully, installing IETS when required, meeting the effluent standard, and monitoring your wastewater. It will help you to protect the river and the communities. The compliance is not just a legal requirement, it is also part of a sustainable and responsible industry development in Malaysia. That's all from me.